Chris C. Perkins became the newest chief of police in Roanoke City 17 years after he began his career as a patrol officer. City manager Chris Marrano chose Perkins from a group of candidates, several from within the ranks and many from far afield. The top cop at age 40, Perkins succeeded Joe Gaskins upon the longtime chief's retirement. Law enforcement is all in the family. His sister is a sheriff's deputy in Roanoke City, while his brother is a Roanoke police officer. Married with one daughter, Perkins earned a bachelor's degree in forensic anthropology from the University of Tennessee and a master's from Hollins in interdisciplinary studies. He also attended the FBI Academy. His challenge upon taking office to those who want to improve their neighborhoods was, "What have you done?" Chief Perkins, welcome to the interview.
Thank you, Gene, for having me.
Was there some point in your law enforcement career, Chief, where you said, "I want to be chief someday"? I mean, was that something you wanted to do early on, even as a patrolman early on?
Yes, it was. When I joined the Roanoke Police Department, I felt that at some point in my career I would have this opportunity. Wasn't quite sure it would be in Roanoke, though I'm extremely pleased that it is. But I felt that at some point I would be a chief of police somewhere.
Okay. Your department, I guess, is about 300 employees. I think you said 248 sworn officers. Have you devised a mission statement for them yet? You know, have you put the Chris Perkins stamp of approval on your mission statement yet?
Well, the nice thing about my transition is I was appointed acting chief on July the 1st of this year. And I started meeting with the patrol officers, and as being the deputy chief at the time, they understood kind of my initiatives and things that I wanted to accomplish. But I went in and I said, you know, being the acting chief, it was very difficult because I kind of had to keep things kind of in the road, not knowing who would be chief at that point. And
there were quite a number of applicants.
There was. Right. And so I wanted to make sure that I kept it in the road, doing what we did, nothing drastic. But since being named chief, you know, what I want to do is I want police officers to understand that, and the community to understand, that we've got to communicate better. And that means that citizens got to understand we're humans, not robots. And the officers have to understand that it's okay to be compassionate while being passionate about, you know, what their job entails, which is social control. And so my mission is I want the officers to soften how they approach our citizens, because I think there's times where we would get a complaint from a citizen that, you know, that officer was rude, when technically the officer was just saying, "Ma'am, these are the facts." And I want to get away from that dragnet attitude of police officers. Not just the facts. Explain. Be willing. If it's not your job within the city, and if, you know, they say, "Oh, well, I don't handle that. That's code enforcement." To say, "Well, I can get you that answer," and to be more open, and just to be more compassionate in dealing with the citizens. And I think that'll go a long ways for us. So my mission is to bring about more of an engagement and not that robot attitude that people may get from TV, you know, because TV does help promote law enforcement, but it also hurts law enforcement when people see that.
The tough, no-nonsense approach.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that if you can get a better dialogue going with the community, obviously the goal is to get better feedback from the community also. Absolutely,
and the feedback from the community is just essential, because I can tell you, 248 police officers and 300 other, and add that to a total of 300 other employees, is not going to have the effect on what our role is when it comes to crime prevention or the reduction of crime. But 95,000 citizens out there in our community who are engaged at a level that they feel comfortable talking with us and sharing those things, that's what's going to have the impact. So I almost look at the police officer as an ambassador, and for the citizens, the feedback is, hey, what can we do today to help resolve whatever issue it is we may be facing? So, and that's kind of the goal. It goes along with the mission, but that feedback is extremely important.
Right. And when you took the office permanently on October 13th, you sort of put it back on people in the community. What have you done? You want people in the community to look at themselves and say, what have you done for your community? What have you done for your kids to keep them on the track and all that?
Absolutely, and that's it, because I think young people today, I think the effort that should be out there and shared, not just with police officers, but those influentials in those young people's lives, is if I make a mistake, I can overcome that mistake. And that's why one of my initiatives is I don't want to take a young person who makes that mistake and throw them into that world of being a convicted felon, because I think that creates something that they'll never overcome in their life.
Endless cycle. Right?
It is. And so by engaging that community and finding that influential in that child's life, to say, you know, that's disappointing, I don't want you to do this, and here's what, you know, you're better than that, comes much better from that person than it does from me, and or another police officer in this department. So that's very important.
Mm-hmm. You worked quite a while with Chief Joe Gaskins. What did you learn from Chief Gaskins before he retired? What do you think the biggest lesson you might have learned from Chief Gaskins?
Patience. I have, my entire career has been, you know, I've been go, 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 go. And
right, you're only 40 and you're chief at 40.
Exactly.
Right?
And the last 2 years as deputy chief under Chief Gaskins, truly his lasting legacy with me is going to be patience. I've learned to slow down, evaluate everything properly, not to be so impulsive, and though that has served me well to get to this point, now I can sit back and the patience is going to take hold.
Right. And I know, looking at your resume, Chris, you worked through the ranks: uniform patrol, vice, community policing, accreditation, criminal investigations. You were in the operations division as a deputy chief. Does that help you now in your relationships with the guys in the ranks and the gals in the ranks, because you've done that, you've been there, done that? Does that help you a lot?
I think it does. I think they realize that the job that they're doing now, you know, he's done that,
right?
And I think they think that way, and the things. Also, it helps me in a way in dealing with young officers, because I've made the same mistakes that they may make in their career, and I can that insight helps me to deal with them better, to not be so critical. Whereas, you know, hey, you know, I made that mistake back at that time, and so I think they realize that. And I think if you speak to people, you know, I try to be very fair and work through the situation, and you know, I think that does help.
How much did being acting chief for several months help you slide into your role as the permanent chief?
It was actually more difficult, I think.
Was it really?
Because, you know, during that time, you don't want to rock the boat or change the direction of the department so much, because that could be detrimental to the officers, because somebody could walk in and it might not have been me as chief, and the direction completely changes. So it was difficult for me, and that's where that patience came in, you know, under Chief Gaskins, to, okay, let's just keep it in the road. We got all the time in the world when we know who will be chief to work toward the direction. And so I thought it was more difficult. That transition period was a difficult time.
I wanted to bring up, I guess law enforcement is all in the family.
It is.
You have a brother who's an officer.
I do.
And a sister who's a sheriff's deputy.
She's a lieutenant in the sheriff's office, and my father worked at the Smith County Sheriff's Office, which is the county seat is Marion, Virginia, where I'm from.
So law enforcement's just been a family thing. You must have had some interesting conversations around the dinner table.
Yes. I remember growing up, and in fact, how I made it to Roanoke was through a close friend of mine and my father's, who is the chief of police in Marion, and his brother, who is a retired deputy sheriff from Smith County. And so, you know, it was been part of my life for a very long time, and it's actually not just my immediate family. My first cousin is a 911 dispatcher for the city, and so public service itself. My wife works in the school system for the city. I have my cousin that's a principal at Fallon Park for the city. So you know,
public service is a big thing with your family, obviously. Okay. We're going to take a quick break. Our guest is Roanoke City Police Chief Chris Perkins. This is The Interview. We'll be right back.